always is challenging, right? Like doesn't need to be a certified product, but even like whatever product, you always deal with different stuff, challenging stuff, right? So on that note, can you share with us what has been like your most challenging project so far, if you can mention one, in terms of mechanical elements or electrical elements, something that you can find that, okay, well, this was a really good example on what things I need to know moving forward, right?
I think that every project has a certain challenges. I wouldn't say that there was a particular project specifically that I would consider to be the most challenging project. I find that the most challenging part of our job is not so much the technical. It's more about the simple balance of the owners with high expectations but limited budgets, the subtrades that have either limited labor or limited materials available to them or timeframes. I find that the balance between limited timeframes, it changes for every project, and so it makes every project a certain amount of challenging. But every time that we do a challenging project, we seem to get better at it. We seem to get better at finding that balance. I find that all too often when we see mechanical designs that they assume limitless timeframes, they assume limitless budgets, they assume limitless patience of the subtrades and general contractors. And so the more that we understand, the more that we learn from our subtrades, the better that we become at finding that balance. And so it intrinsically means that our projects, even complex projects, become more manageable, less challenging, even though the relative complexity is going higher and higher.
Right. So yeah, basically that was a trigger my next question. And maybe you already responded that, but yeah, how do you overcome the situation? So you're saying, well, you are doing something beforehand, which is educating people, right? But what you can define as how you can overcome the challenging situation?
Yeah, and again, it's mostly about identifying and managing expectations. And so if I know that there are certain expectations that are not going to get met, it's important for us to get on record and make sure that everybody understands that it's not something that we like to leave to chance. And so when we identify that perhaps budget is too small, perhaps the time frame is too short, or perhaps just due to availability, and especially this is a problem that we're running into recently here with COVID, is the availability of certain products in reasonable timeframes is just getting unreasonable. And so what could be expected before is not necessarily what can be expected today. So it's important to us, and we ran into this a little bit on the Scott Subaru project there, where we understood that the building was going to be a very high performing building, but as was mentioned in the previous podcast, the majority of the usage, like the utility usage and the energy usage in that building, is now less to do with the building itself and more to do with the actual ongoing operations. And so even in a high performing building, there's still going to be things like computers, there's still going to be lights, there's still going to be, especially in an auto dealership, there's going to be shop equipment and air compressors and car washes and things like that. And so if the expectation was that the utility bills were going to go away, that would be an unreasonable expectation, right? And so some of the tension that we had on that project there was simply managing those expectations and just making sure that everybody understood that even in a high-performing building, there were still going to be expenses and there were still going to be costs associated with utilities. And considering that, being that we used a more expensive heat source, so namely our heat was being generated through our electrical service rather than our natural gas service. Even in a high-performing building, any kind of electrical load tends to be a little on the expensive side, and so we were just worried. We were simply worried that there was expectations of extremely low or almost non-existent utility bills, but in reality, I think that there was still going to be some. Now, I'm not sure how that eventually played out, and I'm sure that we were probably a bit more alarmist than we needed to be, but it was important to us that we managed those expectations.
Correct. So now that we're going back into trade with this Subaru project, what was the aftertaste after all that madness in trying to kind of figure out how make that building work? So what is your input on that one?
I think we found a reasonable balance, and at the end of the day, we're happy that the building is performing. We're happy that the building is comfortable. There was different expectations for what some of the consultants were thinking for the size of the equipment and how often it would need to run and that kind of thing. And so we did take a lot of their advice into account, and we did, I wouldn't say that we compromised our design, but we looked very heavily at our design. We stopped using any kind of like rules of thumb. Like we went right back to our fundamental principles on that project. And I think we came up with a reasonable balance there. And so I'm glad that the building is performing, but getting to there was challenging. Just because of, again, availability of components, availability of knowledge, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and the other part, like, you were touching on that one briefly, saying that just put the awareness or false expectations, right? So I always find that we always are pretty worried about the capital investment, right? But once that everything goes to real life, once the building is commissioned, right? After that, like the life cycle of the actual equipment or the actual maintenance costs, right? Do you provide any sort of additional information on your trying to educate the public in general? So trying to say, for example, okay, you're going to get this. Well, maybe we're being so biased to the mechanical equipment, but that's the only example that I can bring on my mind right now. But for example, I know that some of these high efficiency type of mechanical components needs a pretty rigorous maintenance program where you have to kind of just exchange filters every so and so. And those filters, yeah, I can remember the other time I was talking with George and my boss, and he was saying, yeah, those filters are not the one that you can get in Home Depot or whatever, right? So that's a pretty high end type of filter. So do you have like a little bit of information to provide to everybody in order to kind of just understand that process as well, or how that works with you guys?
Yeah, and the truth is that we're living in a much better age for that kind of knowledge, and the availability of even specialty equipment is a lot more common now. Where I'm not sure about the details of this, but I feel as though anytime that I order something directly from China, say through Alibaba or AliExpress, that would have been unheard of 5 or even 10 years ago. And so even if specialty equipment is somewhat readily available, the other thing that's readily available is the knowledge of the people that service this equipment. It used to be that the local technician with years and years of experience would be the only one that would know the ins and outs of how to maintain and keep this equipment running. But now that there's a lot more open knowledge and simply you've got the world of information at your fingertips through any number of different sources on the internet, that even local technicians can benefit from the knowledge of a globe worth of equipment. And because even in the context of the Subaru passive house there, these are not, we haven't custom built any of that equipment. I mean, all that equipment is still off the shelf. It's in use somewhere in the world. And so if somewhere somebody knows how to fix it, maintain it, and get parts for it, then that information is theoretically available even to the local people here now. And so I think that the availability of parts and replacement parts and knowledge of how to maintain this stuff used to be a problem. And this used to be a problem as recently as, say, 5 years ago. I think that it's less of a problem now than it used to be.
Correct. And that is making total sense, right? Like the way how everything is in the website, and you can just find different methods or different process how to maintain things. Yeah, you're right. Is at hand right now. So that makes total sense. So this is more like a personal question. So how do you continue to learn in order to stay on top of things within your industry? So what is, I understand that these type of audios are listened by a lot of new generations that they are trying to kind of just open their ways on the future and this type of industry, which is architectural or engineer dedicated to new construction or renovations. Can you share that with us?
So on a day-to-day basis, we get constant feedback, especially from the subtrades that we deal with on a constant basis. They tell us, they give us good feedback about availability of things, cost of things, how best to use them. Even certain manufacturing techniques, like if a particular vendor has changed a particular project or product and it made it worse to use or more difficult or more expensive or anything, we usually get that feedback right away because we have a very good open line of communication with the people that actually have to interact with these products. And knowing the product is and knowing what the products are and how to use them forms the basis for a good chunk of what we do on a daily basis. But on a more fundamental, like philosophical base, the admission of your own ignorance is key. And so if you can admit to yourself that you don't know everything, if you can admit to yourself that there's things that you can learn, and also things that you can learn from unsuspecting sources. So old school people, new school people, tradespeoples, even any kind of vendor or anything like that. And so if you can admit to yourself that there's people out there that know more about what you're doing than you do, then you're going to be a lot more open to understanding their information, like gaining and understanding their information that they have to offer. And so it's only when you start thinking that you're smart, it's only when you start thinking that you're better than what you really are is when you stop learning.
Right. And now that you're talking about that note of being philosophical, I have another question for you. Then is what could be one thing that you wish had known when you began your career? You can share that with us as well.
It was interesting to me when I first started my career at how little of my formal education that I would use on a daily basis. Now, it's not to say that the education that I received was of no value. It's just that the practical application of what I learned in school was a lot less pronounced than what I thought it was going to be. And I wouldn't be able to do the job that I'm doing right now without the formal education, but it's more because it gives me a fundamental, deep understanding of the fundamental principles rather than the practical skills to actually do the job. And so if I was going to give advice to anybody, especially new university graduates, it's emphasize things like the soft skills, emphasize the ability to learn rather than the formal subjects. If a student is going to take classes, they should take classes because it enhances their fundamental understanding, not because they think that it would be a skill that a potential employer will look for. The other thing that I was surprised by too is every employer of newly graduated engineers recognizes this shortfall, like this major discrepancy between what you learn in school, what you learn on the job. And so every employer that employs new graduates understands that the new graduate is going to start from absolute scratch, and there's very little in the school that are actually going to help them on a day-to-day basis. But having that fundamental understanding of first principles and engineering knowledge from school only helps to that potential employer to learn faster and truly understand the nature of their work, and then the actual day-to-day stuff tends to follow shortly after.
Well, that's a pretty good thought, because lately I've trying to kind of read a lot of books about business and economics, right? And it was like this specific, I cannot remember the name of the book. Maybe I can share that later on, but totally is related with what just you said, right? It was a little bit of statistics about the life span of an actual corporation. And I think like the average is around 15 to 20 years, but it was one specific corporation in the States, I guess, that they were talking that that corporation last for 70 years, nothing as before. And it was like some kind of characteristics about what they did in order to kind of just achieve that long period of time to this corporation to be alive, type of thing. And it was several items, but the first one is they were learning faster, and they were trying to adapt on the current circumstances, right? So I think that is a pretty good point that you're touching there, because that's the truth of the matter, right? If you go back to the basics and just trying to kind of learn to learn, I think that is a big item to consider, right? So,
well, especially in the corporate world, right? Complacency is rampant.
Correct.
Where the failure to stay current is kind of the downfall of the corporations. But if the corporation could simply just admit to themselves that maybe the way that we've been doing business for the last 70 years doesn't work in today's context, then all of a sudden they're open. If that corporation is open to these new ideas, then they can easily adapt. But if they can't admit that to themselves, if they can't admit their own ignorance, then you see the ultimate failure.
Correct. Oh man. So no, that's great. That's great. I think I have some other questions here, but we have a crunching time. I have just one last question. So thank you for your participation on all this. I think your responses are pretty good on every topic that we touch base today. But my last question is just more related to how can we connect with you or your company.
So usually the first interaction with my company from the general public is usually the website, which is just www.908eng.com. Carlos mentioned our philosophy. It's right there on the front page. We also have a number of other technical documents that if you happen to be in our field that you might find helpful. But otherwise, though, first point of contact would be through our website.
Awesome. No, thank you for that. And for sure, we're going to put some links on the description of this podcast, so you can just have direct access to the website. And no, thank you, Craig, for your time. Thank you for being available to this interview. Thank you for sharing all your knowledge, all your background with all the people that are listening right now. And hopefully we can just sit down and maybe we can just touch base with the specific topic. I think this was basically a salad of a lot of different subjects. But of course, maybe we can have you in the future and trying to kind of just talk about the very specific items. So thank you for your time, and hopefully we can work together in the project soon. Great. No, thank you for that.
Okay, good.
And please don't forget to leave me a review on whichever platform that you're using to listen in this podcast. Either good or bad. Remember, Mexican have thicker skin. You won't hurt my feelings, that's for sure. And better yet, if it has some good criticism, so I can learn from it and improve it, that will be even greater. I understand this hasn't been perfect, but it can be better every time. I recognize your time is valuable. I would like you to enjoy this moment with me as well. Also, if you like what you get from this audio, I will recommend you to be the first to share this info with your friends, so maybe they can get something valuable from it as well. Thanks for listening, and let's meet again soon.